Guys!
Okay, I'll admit it. I am an absolute slut when it comes to pretty DVD covers. So we are talking Paranormal Encounters, which is actually also known as Ghost Project, but also known as Side Project. Now this is directed by Francesco Finkelstein, I think his name is, and is a kind of obviously a ghost hunting movie, I suppose, and takes elements from Ghostbusters, House on Haunted Hill, and My Science Project, and kind of mixes it all up, and then brings you Paranormal Encounters, or Ghost Project, as I think it's known in America. So, what is the story? Well, it focuses on three brilliant computer technology students, and they're kind of, you know, studying, but they're kind of behind in their kind of lectures and everything like that. Our main guy, Brian, is depressed because his girlfriend was killed in a kind of car accident, and he's sort of using these VR glasses to kind of almost have a relationship with this kind of VR model of her. Very kind of timely, you might say, with the advent of AI. Now, these three students stumble across some old ghost hunting equipment that was laying around in an abandoned factory. And this stuff's been there since the 70s. But they thought it does kind of work. And they actually managed to kind of detect sort of supernatural presence. However, this 70s equipment doesn't work properly as it antagonises the spirits and causes them to kind of lash out. So our trio of now amateur ghost hunters decide they're going to kind of modify this equipment and modernise it and try and resolve the issues that causes spirits to kind of lash out, and use it so they can actually see ghosts via kind of an app they've created on either their mobile phone, or, as our main guy Brian tends to use, a kind of pair of VR goggles. They decide to test this new kind of app in this kind of, once again, this kind of abandoned factory, which was had some tragic past. Inevitably, things don't go quite according to plan. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So, despite the cover here on the British version of this DVD, this is not a found footage movie, although it kind of makes it out like it's kind of a Grave Encounters kind of style movie. But there is elements, I suppose, that do kind of come into play. So let's talk about what I think works in this movie. I actually enjoyed the kind of the scientific angle. I mean, Ghostbusters was a seminal movie for me when I was growing up, and I kind of liked the fact that you had these, you know, guys from a kind of a scientific background finding out how to kind of like deal with these kind of ghosts. And it's a similar setup in some ways. I mean, they're not trying to bust a ghost exactly, but you know, they're trying to kind of develop this technology to, you know, communicate or observe kind of spirits and things like that. And you have this kind of trio, and it does remind you of the Ghostbusters. Even some of their equipment, I suspect, is somewhat kind of like homaging the Ghostbusters, the way it kind of whirls and kind of like makes sounds and things like that, will remind you of Ghostbusters. There's some definite kind of like, you know, homages to that movie. And it's, you know, you have these kind of quite fun kind of students, again, very much like that sort of original Ghostbusters movie. So I quite like the kind of the scientific kind of approach to this, rather than kind of going through a, you know, a religious kind of approach to like an exorcism and things like that. So that was all quite fun. And I have to say as well, the way that it incorporates the visuals of the ghosts, kind of as we see them through the various screens, be it on these kind of goggles or through kind of the mobile phone, they kind of slightly kind of digitized, because that's how the kind of the technology is sort of imaging them and stuff like that. I have to say, I quite enjoyed the imagery here. I thought it looked pretty effective, And again, this is where the kind of the similarities to something like, you know, House on the Haunted Hill. They have to use special glasses and things like that. So there's elements here from films, and as I say, my science project had a kind of a similar theme where they find some technology and kind of use it to kind of pass off as their own, things like that. So it's a kind of a fun premise, and I do like the visuals of the ghosts, and I like the fact that it starts off relatively kind of in a mundane presence. The female of the group happens to live in this kind of like apartment where is the ghost of her friend's mum, so it's kind of somewhat benevolent, and that's their kind of training wheel, so to speak. They're having to kind of like, you know, try this one as their kind of first attempt at kind of really, you know, imaging a ghost and things like that. So that all I quite enjoyed, I have to say. And you know, it's a fun idea, even though it does borrow from other properties. I feel like it's maybe an under kind of utilised conceit for a film to a certain degree, and I could have quite liked it. When we kind of go into the kind of on the third act, we go into this abandoned factory. I've got to say, you know, I enjoy that kind of setup. I enjoy these kind of old dilapidated buildings that look kind of creepy, and they're kind of large, and they're kind of populated by, you know, dozens of ghosts. I think it looks pretty good. You know, we also have a connection with these kind of like these, like one of the older scientists from the original kind of that 70s team and things like that who comes into it. And I quite enjoyed the scenes with him. We have a prologue at the beginning as well, where we see his team in the kind of the 70s. Well, it doesn't work. So 2 out of the 3 main actors speaking English, but with very strong accents from, I'm assuming, their kind of their native countries, and I found them quite hard to understand. So we have 3 characters with 3 different accents, and the 2 that are clearly not originally from an English-speaking country, I couldn't always understand what they were saying, especially when they're kind of trying to talk over each other. I kind of found I was missing dialogue, and I really couldn't understand what was being said. It doesn't help also that I don't think the acting is particularly stellar. From the majority of the cast, I'm sorry to say. It isn't terrible, I have seen worse, but the acting is very broad. I feel we kind of play into certain kind of stereotypes, and at the times I've got to say the acting is a little wooden, it comes across as a little clunky, and there are some quite cheesy and hammy dialogue as well, and that kind of plays into the kind of, I think, some of the kind of the stereotypes that this movie kind of falls into. So it's not brilliant acting. The production design is really nice. However, I've got to say I found the third act undramatic. I don't know how best to describe it. This is the big kind of like set piece of the film where we go into this abandoned factory, and it all looks great. I thought the interior design looks good. I like the visuals of the ghost, but it just didn't seem particularly threatening or spooky. I think partly it's down to the music choice. I think the music in that section didn't work for me. I think things happen a little bit too easily for our kind of protagonists. They sort of stumble on this technology a little bit too easily. Their first encounter goes a little bit too well, and it's not long before they're kind of, you know, they're right up in it. So I just found their progression a little bit too kind of easy and quick. The technology is developed incredibly quick from the kind of the that 70s old tech. It's, you know, it's kind of modified in lightning speed. So I really didn't feel like we were kind of going on a journey. So you're not fully built into their characters. The bad acting doesn't help either, I have to say. Then we have that third act, and it just didn't quite work in regards to building up any real tension. I felt like, you know, we're walking around, we're talking a lot about the technology and things like that, which is interesting, but then, you know, we just have these kind of ghosts jump out, and it just didn't really work. There was no like build-up. There was no like attempt really here to be scary or building up a kind of a creepy atmosphere. We're just walking around this this place, and then you see a few kind of ghosts like mincing about and stuff like that. I don't know, it just didn't really work for me. Visually speaking, it was fine, but there was not a real lack of atmosphere, a real lack of dramatic tension in this film in regards to that third act. I liked to a point, despite some of the acting, the first two acts, the kind of the building up of the idea behind what they're kind of doing, even though I do think it came a little easy for them. But when we get to that third act, it's not terrible, but it just doesn't have that weight, it doesn't have that scary factor. We do get a little bit of kind of like, you know, death on screen, gore, a little bit of gore. But I don't know, it just didn't really hit for me in regards to a genuinely kind of scary movie. And I was just sitting back thinking, this isn't creeping me out at all. You know, and I love it. I love being a critic. I love like movies like things like Grave Encounters, which this movie I feel is, again, somewhat comparable in some ways, but it just didn't hit for me in regards to a creepiness factor. And I think there's a number of reasons for that, and some of which I've mentioned. But I just don't think it really lacked in regards to drama, the tension building, the atmosphere, the scariness. Wasn't there for me. But overall, it's not a bad film. You know, I kind of still quite enjoyed the premise. Even though I did think the acting was brilliant, I thought the characters were reasonably kind of well defined. I like the visuals, I like the idea of the kind of the ghost and this, how it works with the technology. But it could have been more. Maybe it needed to be a little longer, this movie, in actual fact, rather than, normally I would say the opposite way around, but I think this movie could have been a little longer, 10, 15 minutes longer perhaps. It had a little bit more structure in the story, and then really amped up the kind of the scare factor towards the end of the movie, but it is what it is. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.